On the morning of November 6, 2019, Jacksonville, Florida, woke to the kind of silence that feels staged. Too still, too quiet, as if the world were holding its breath. Then, at 7:06 a.m., a 911 call shattered it.
What's going on?
I do not know where my daughter is.
Did she run away?
No,
Where was she last seen?
she was here with me.
What was she wearing?
A purple shirt and like pink pajamas. It was like a t-shirt. She was
The pants were pink?
Say again?
Okay, just stay on the line with me. Do you know where she could have gone?
No.
Have you checked?
Like she just came home. I just picked her up on Halloween night. She was with my mom in Alabama.
Okay, have you checked the house?
Yes.
Okay. Did she have a favorite hiding spot in the house? Like under
No.
the bed?
I checked on her there.
Okay, let's check again. Go to her bedroom. And let's check her closet. Nobody else in the house has seen her?
No, it's just me and her.
Alright, are you in her room? Okay. Check under her bed again.
Her voice was trembling but measured, controlled, as if trying to sound composed for whoever was listening. On paper, the caller was Brianna Williams, a 27-year-old U.S. Navy petty officer stationed at Naval Air Station Jacksonville. But that morning she wasn't a sailor. She was the mother of a 5-year-old named Taylor Rose Williams, and she was telling the world her daughter was missing. Within minutes, squad cars from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office pulled up outside the small brick home on Ivy Street in Brentwood. Body cam footage later released by investigators shows officers fanning out through the living room, calling Taylor's name.
Hey, all right, man. All right. Hey, tell us what happened.
I woke up this morning and started getting
Try
up from
27.
work.
You can cancel that.
She wasn't in her room.
Okay. Have you had any problems with anybody? Okay. Anything unusual? Okay. Do you live by yourself?
Just me and her.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
We'll search your house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and they said back door. I think the back.
The house didn't look like the scene of a break-in. The back door, as Brianna said, was unlocked, but there was no sign of forced entry, no pried locks, no footprints on the morning dew behind the porch.
You recently moved in, or?
Yes.
Okay. When'd you move in?
Like, I started moving stuff. Well, I signed a lease back in June, but the place kept getting broken.
693,
So I
35
didn't
on
want
that
to move
lane.
there, but the guy was like leaving it vacant. He was putting in that risk.
Okay. When did you actually move in? In June or?
No, like a week ago, a few days ago.
Okay. Today's Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay. Did you move in, let's say, over the weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, canvas.
Alright. Alright.
How tall is she?
She's like 1 year.
What do you figure, 3 foot? It's 3 foot, I guess.
Color hair?
She is in an afro.
Officer 75341 kilo.
Let's say brown skin. I'll put our bolo in a second. And she was wearing purple. What was she wearing?
She's wearing pink and purple.
Pink and purple pajamas.
Inside, there were scattered toys, small shoes near the couch, and a bed that looked as if a child had once slept there and never returned. Officers began treating the case as a possible abduction. By 8 a.m., dispatchers had pushed out an Amber Alert across Florida. Neighbors were questioned. Patrol units combed nearby parks, retention ponds, and wooded easements. But from the very beginning, something about the mother's story didn't fit. When detectives pressed for a timeline, when she had last seen Taylor, Brianna's answers shifted. At one moment, she said she'd tucked her in around midnight. Later, she said she saw her around 6 p.m. the night before. Welcome to True Crime Story HQ. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe. Brianna Williams was known among her Navy peers as disciplined and private. She had served as an information systems technician, a career that demanded order. Co-workers told reporters later she rarely socialized, rarely mentioned family. What little they knew of her personal life revolved around her daughter, photos on her desk, drawings taped to her workstation. But according to investigators, there was something else about that home, something that didn't match the image of a devoted single mother. During the first walkthrough, deputies noticed a smell. Not overwhelming, but enough to note in their field report. A faint, sour odor that hung near the child's bedroom. They chalked it up to old trash or a spoiled meal. It wasn't until later, when forensics returned with luminol and blacklight sweeps, that the full picture began to emerge. By late morning, the FBI and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement joined the search. Helicopters scanned the neighborhood. Volunteers in reflective vests canvassed door to door with printed flyers of Taylor Rose. Dark eyes, bright smile, pink pajamas with cartoon hearts. Every local news station cut into programming to cover the developing story. Cameras caught Brianna standing beside officers in uniform, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, hands folded tightly in front of her. A portrait of grief and control. When reporters asked about the last time she'd seen Taylor alive, Brianna gave short, factual answers. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. To most viewers, she looked like a mother trying not to collapse. To investigators, she looked like a woman trying not to reveal something. Detectives started cross-checking her statements with security footage from the neighborhood. Surveillance cameras from nearby intersections and retail lots showed her gray Honda Accord making several late-night drives in the days before Taylor's reported disappearance. When they requested her cell phone records, the truth began to unravel. GPS data placed her car far from Jacksonville, deep into rural Alabama, near the small town of Demopolis, days before the 911 call. That discovery changed everything. The investigation was no longer about a missing child. It was about a timeline that made no sense. Within 48 hours, detectives returned to the Ivy Street home with a search warrant. Evidence technicians carried out bags labeled biological, trash, and electronic. Among the items logged, a vacuum filter with hair fibers, a child's blanket, and several plastic bags containing soil and debris. The smell officers noted earlier now carried weight. One crime scene technician later told reporters the odor was consistent with decomposition. Throughout those first days, Brianna remained on base at NAS Jacksonville, cooperating on paper, but increasingly distant in person. She stopped answering her phone at certain hours. When police scheduled a follow-up interview, she postponed, then canceled, citing exhaustion and military duties. Investigators found her reluctance troubling. Behind the scenes, the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit advised Jacksonville detectives to treat her both as a potential witness and a suspect. The turning point came November 12, 2019, 6 days after the 911 call. Using triangulated cell data, law enforcement in Marengo County, Alabama, located an area matching her travel pattern, a wooded stretch off a logging road outside Demopolis. There, under a makeshift pile of leaves and branches, they found what they feared: human remains. At first, officials didn't confirm the identity. The remains were too decomposed. But the location, exactly where her phone pinged, was enough. When investigators told Brianna Williams, she didn't cry. She collapsed. That night, she was taken to a Jacksonville hospital after what authorities described as an apparent overdose of prescription medication. She survived. As soon as doctors cleared her, officers moved in. On November 12, 2019, she was arrested on charges of child neglect and providing false information to law enforcement. She said little during booking. The mugshot shows a woman staring straight ahead, jaw set, eyes red but dry. At that moment, the charge sheet didn't yet say murder. Florida law enforcement needed to confirm identification and cause of death. Alabama's Department of Forensic Sciences began its work, while Florida prosecutors quietly built a case that would span 2 states and nearly 3 years. The Amber Alert was canceled. The flyers came down. But for those who had searched the swamps and fields for Taylor Rose, the case didn't end. It just changed shape. Behind closed doors, prosecutors in the 4th Judicial Circuit met with detectives to catalog the evidence. GPS data, forensic soil samples, text messages, and the growing gap between Brianna's claims and what the science showed. The next stage of this story would move from a missing person investigation to a criminal prosecution that asked one impossible question. What really happened to Taylor Rose Williams between the last photo on her mother's phone and that call to 911? Prosecutors weren't rushing. They knew the case was complex. Taylor had last been seen alive months before Brianna ever dialed 911. Her body was found in another state, under conditions that destroyed key forensic details. They needed the full picture, not just pieces, but room by room, device by device, document by document. The pieces began to fall into place. Detectives discovered that Brianna had moved from one apartment to another in the months leading up to the 911 call. Neighbors at her previous residence reported seeing Taylor less and less, and eventually, not at all. One neighbor told investigators she had noticed a foul smell coming from the apartment long before Brianna moved out. Other witnesses reported that the child often appeared malnourished, quiet, withdrawn. Behind every detail was the same unspoken question. When was the last time Taylor Rose was truly alive? When forensic teams opened the evidence packages, they found items that told the story Brianna never did. Filthy children's clothing, plastic bags containing soil matching the Alabama site, a vacuum filter dense with hair and debris. One document in the release described the living condition of Taylor's room at a former apartment. A mattress stained beyond recognition, empty food containers scattered in corners, a closet with rotting items that hinted at neglect long before the missing person call. It became clear, Taylor didn't vanish from her bed on November 6th. Something had happened much earlier. The 911 call wasn't the beginning of the story, it was the desperate end of a cover-up. The Alabama medical examiner faced a nearly impossible task. Taylor's remains were too decomposed for a definitive cause of death. There were no intact organs, no clear trauma to examine, no singular injury that could explain how she died. The official ruling, cause of death, undetermined, manner of death, undetermined. This left prosecutors with a challenge. How do you prove murder when you can't prove how the victim died? But they had something stronger than a single cause of death. They had a timeline soaked in inconsistencies, evidence of neglect, and a pattern of behavior that painted a picture far darker than any autopsy could. Phone records revealed something chilling. Brianna had driven to rural Alabama multiple times, not once, but repeatedly, before making the 911 call. Search history on her phone included queries about decomposition rates. GPS logs placed her at the disposal site before the remains were found. Detectives presented all of this to the state attorney's office, and quietly, behind the scenes, a larger case began to take shape. It was no longer about neglect. It was homicide, and they believed Brianna Williams knew exactly what had happened to her daughter, even if she never said it aloud. While prosecutors prepared their case, Brianna sat in the Duval County Jail awaiting trial.
You normally just quiet all the time, just real low key, don't do a lot of talking.
I don't want to talk.
You don't want to talk? Okay.
Tired.
You're tired, you don't want to talk. So you don't want to talk to the police at all? Okay.
She declined most interviews. She avoided the press. She didn't speak publicly about Taylor. Court records show she appeared emotionless during procedural hearings. She dressed neatly in jail-issued uniforms, stood beside her attorney, and said little beyond, "Yes, sir," or "No, sir." Behind the legal strategy was something painfully simple. With no confirmed cause of death, and with her daughter's remains found out of state, Brianna's defense was built on the possibility, no matter how unlikely, that the state could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt how Taylor died. But prosecutors didn't need that. They only needed to show that Brianna's actions caused it, whether through direct violence or ongoing neglect. In 2022, a massive evidence release became public. Thousands of photos, hours of body cam, 911 audio, interviews, and forensic documentation. Some images were too graphic to show. Others revealed the disturbing reality of Taylor's living conditions. Among the items, filthy children's clothes, trash-filled living areas, photos of Brianna's car trunk soil samples from Alabama, video clips of Brianna's first interview with police. To the public, the release was shocking. To investigators, it confirmed what they had pieced together for months. Taylor wasn't missing. Taylor had been dead long before the search began. As the case grew stronger, prosecutors approached Brianna with the reality of what she faced. If convicted of first-degree murder, she could face life without parole or even the death penalty, depending on aggravating factors. Her attorneys negotiated. Her family remained silent. Her military colleagues expressed shock, but not complete surprise. Many admitted they had rarely seen her with the child. After more than 2 years of investigations, hearings, and evidence review, Brianna made a decision that stunned the state of Florida. She agreed to plead guilty. At her plea hearing, Brianna Williams spoke publicly for the first time since the 911 call. Her voice was barely audible as she said the words, "Guilty." She did not explain what happened. She did not reveal when Taylor died. She did not describe what led her to leave her daughter in a wooded area across state lines. She only admitted responsibility. For prosecutors, it was the closest thing to justice they could achieve without a confession. For the public, it was a relief, but not closure. For Taylor Rose, it was a small step toward the truth she never got to tell.
This is case number 65 on the calendar, case number 19 CF 11711. We're set for pretrial this morning. Counsel for the state and defendant are present. Ms. Anderson, how are you proceeding today?
Your Honor, the state has tendered to Madam Clerk an amended information. I believe it's the second amended information in this case, charging a single count of second-degree murder.
In light of that, we need to go forward with an arraignment. I'll look to you, Mr. Beard. How are you proceeding today?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense is in receipt of the one count second amended information. At this point in time, my client would have authorized me to plead guilty to that charge. We have gone over the pleading in its entirety. It's kind of pleaded guilty. That would be a sentence between 20 and 25 years. God knows have to do with my client and his life. That form has been completed, executed, and signed by my client, myself, and the state, and presented to Your Honor to proceed with the call.
All right. Go ahead and adjust the microphone for the benefit of your client. Ms. Williams, if you raise your right hand, be sworn, please. Excuse me. You solemnly swear the evidence you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, put your hand down, make yourself as comfortable as you can. Ms. Williams, the state has filed an amended information this morning. This is arraignment. Your lawyer has indicated that you want to enter a plea of guilty to the pending charge. You're charged with second-degree murder in the second amended information. That carries a range, a minimum range under the guideline of 20.5 years all the way to life. As I understand it, given the nature of the form I've been given, this is an open plea to the court. What that means as a practical matter is that if you go forward with your plea today, I'll set a hearing. You'll be able to call witnesses on your behalf if you choose to. I'm glad to hear from you if you want to testify or give a statement yourself. The state also has a right to be heard. They can call witnesses, including any that they think appropriate. I'll consider any documentary evidence that's consistent with the evidence code. And then I'm going to hear arguments from the lawyers. And based on everything I hear, I'm going to fashion a sentence that I think is appropriate. You're entitled to a pre-sentence investigation report. What would happen is that the Department of Corrections would conduct an investigation and complete a document for me that would provide me with a whole host of information that I don't otherwise get. Mr. Beard, I assume your client is requesting a PSI?
Yes, Your Honor, we discussed that and we'll be asking for a PSI.
I'll go ahead and look to the Department of Corrections at this time and ask that it be prepared. That'll be an additional source of information. I'm going to take all of that information, and then after I hear arguments from the attorneys and consider the evidence that's been presented before me, I'll fashion a sentence that I think is appropriate. Unless there is a basis to deviate below the guidelines, which is 20.5 years, that's the minimum sentence that I can impose under the law. And the maximum sentence I can impose under the law is life. And so the range is 20.5 years for the maximum sentence of life. With all of that said, do you want to go forward with your plea today?
Yes, sir.
By entering a plea of guilty today, you give up certain rights. You give up your right to trial by jury, the right to have the assistance of a lawyer during that trial, the right to compel the attendance of witnesses on your behalf, the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses against you, the right not to be compelled to incriminate yourself, the right to require the state to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and the right to appeal all matters related to any judgment in your case. And if you're not a U.S. citizen, your plea will be used against you in a deportation proceeding. Ms. Williams, do you understand you give up all those rights by entering a plea of guilty? Has anyone threatened you, coerced you, or promised you anything to get you to plead guilty?
Nothing.
Are you under the influence of any drugs, alcohol, or medication today?
Nothing.
How far have you gone to school?
High school.
Are you a graduate?
Yes, sir.
Can you read and write the English language?
Yes, sir.
I ask you that because I have in my hand a blue form titled Plea of Guilty. Have you read this with your lawyer?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand its content?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that by signing the document, you give up the rights described in the document?
Yes, sir.
Is this your signature that appears on the back page?
Yes, sir.
Are you entering a plea of guilty to the only count of the amended charge, alleging murder in the second degree, because you are in fact guilty?
Yes, sir.
Has your lawyer answered all your questions?
Yes, sir.
Are you satisfied with his representation as your attorney?
Yes, sir.
Do you need any additional time to think about the status of your case or its disposition?
No, sir.
Is there anything you wanted your lawyer to do that he has not done?
No, sir.
Has he done something that you didn't want him to do?
No, sir.
Is the state or defense aware of any DNA evidence that would exonerate the defendant? State,
None to the state at this time.
defense?
None of the defense.
For purposes of the record, what discovery has been complete in preparation for trial on the previous charges?
So I don't have the figure exact, but I would say about 45 depositions have been conducted for review of the 20 plus search warrants, the review of documents provided by the state in its entirety. So to go through every individual piece of that, it's a very limited record. And I've gone through it, I prepared that, and I've discussed that with my client. If we want more specifics, I can provide that. However, at this time, that is, I sufficiently reviewed and explained to my client.
Have you reviewed the content of each of the depositions you've taken with your client?
Yes.
Have you reviewed the substance of each item of discovery that the state has produced consistent with the rules?
Yes.
Have you also discussed with your client potential defenses and options?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Williams, has your lawyer done all of that?
Yes, sir.
And so you have considered the evidence that the state has to present through the depositions that your lawyer has taken, as well as the other discovery items that have been presented for your consideration? Have you reviewed all of that?
Yes, sir.
Have you talked to your lawyer about the options that you have? You have an absolute right to trial by jury, and I'm happy to move the case on toward a jury verdict if that's what you choose to do. Have you talked with your lawyer about all the options you have?
Yes, sir.
Have you discussed potential defenses that you may have with your lawyer?
Yes, sir.
And out of all of those conversations, do you believe that this is in your best interest?
Yes, sir.
I should say, in light of all of those conversations, do you believe this to be in your best interest?
Yes, sir.
On September 20th, 2022, the courtroom in Duval County filled early. Reporters, deputies, and prosecutors knew this hearing would mark the final chapter of a case that had broken the city's heart. When Brianna Williams walked in, escorted by deputies and dressed in beige jail clothing, she kept her head down. She didn't look at anyone, not the prosecutors, not the gallery, not the cameras. She sat quietly at the defense table, hands folded, waiting for the judge who would decide the rest of her life. When the prosecutor stood, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize. He simply laid out the facts the evidence had proven. Taylor had not been alive for months before the 911 call. Her remains were found in rural Alabama, covered by leaves and brush. Her living conditions showed long-term neglect. Her mother misled investigators at every stage of the search. Then, he delivered the line that resonated everywhere Florida news traveled. There is no evidence that Taylor Rose was alive at any point in the months before her mother reported her missing. That sentence alone carried the entire weight of the case. The defense attorney spoke next. He mentioned Brianna's military service. He mentioned stress, mental health, and isolation. But he could not explain why Taylor disappeared from life months before she disappeared from paper. And he could not explain the condition in which she was found. His final point was simple. There is no confirmed cause of death. It was all he had left to say.
excess of 125 for the state, approximately 7 for the defense. I've reviewed them all, some in the company of counsel, and some in my chambers. So that the record is clear, I have reread the precedence investigation report subject to the objections that were raised by Mr. Beard. I've read the defendant's transcripts from secondary school in their entirety. I'm familiar with their content. I've read the defendant's entire packet of military records submitted for my review. That's Defendant's Exhibit 2, including all of the efficiency reports submitted by those who were responsible for supervision in the Navy.
Judge Kevin Blaz took his time. He acknowledged the gaps in the autopsy. He recognized the complexity of the evidence. He noted the tragedy surrounding the case. A child whose life quietly slipped away long before anyone realized she was missing. Then he issued his ruling.
Wanting to ensure that the community is protected and that the sentence is rendered in a way that does not dishonor the death of Taylor Rose, the court sentences you to life in prison.
Brianna didn't react. She didn't cry. She didn't look back. Deputies stood at her sides, placed restraints on her wrists, and escorted her out as the courtroom watched in complete silence. And in that silence, the reality settled. Taylor Rose would never get justice through her own voice, but through the evidence, the legal system had spoken for her. Outside, the state attorney's office gave a brief statement. No theatrics, no long speeches, just one sentence that summarized everything the case had revealed.
Fully know exactly what happened to Taylor Rose Williams. How difficult was that for you guys in this case? Granted, it was just the sentencing. It wasn't that you had to prove anything really, but talk about that a little bit.
So, I mean, that was the thrust of the investigation, was looking at everything we had from cell phones to social media to kind of piece together this timeline of what exactly happened to Taylor Rose, since we didn't have the normal evidence that we would in the case.
And we saw the defendant, she didn't really have any emotion after she was sentenced today. Just let me get your reaction on that just in general.
Well, Brianna Williams' remorse or lack of remorse really isn't important. What's important is that justice has been done for Taylor Rose.
And with that, the courtroom chapter of this tragedy closed. The autopsy could not say how Taylor died. Brianna never said when Taylor died, and no witness existed to explain those missing months. But the evidence, the timeline, the home conditions, the disposal of the body, the misleading statements, formed a truth stronger than any single cause of death. The state didn't need the how. They had the what, the when, and the who. And based on that, the court handed down the only sentence the law allowed: life in prison, a legally final ending, a morally incomplete one, but the only ending available for a child whose voice never reached the courtroom. When Brianna Williams was taken out of the courtroom after receiving a life sentence, Jacksonville finally exhaled. The case had stretched across 3 years, 2 states, thousands of hours of investigative work, and countless unanswered questions. But the truth was simple. Taylor Rose had been failed long before anyone began searching for her. There is still no confirmed cause of death, no witness, no clear timeline of Taylor's final days. The autopsy could not speak. Brianna would not speak. And so the story remains marked by a silence that will never fully be understood. What investigators know is that Taylor disappeared from daily life months before the 911 call. That alone told the court enough. Brianna is now serving life in the Florida Department of Corrections. No parole, no early release, no second chance. But justice does not always equal closure. The sentence answers who is responsible, but not why, not how, and not when. Those pieces are gone forever, lost in the same silence that surrounded Taylor's life in her final months. Taylor had no chance to tell her own story. Her voice never reached the courtroom. Her life ended before most people even knew her name. Everything the world knows about her comes from the people who searched through woods, sifted through evidence, chased phone records, and refused to let her disappear quietly. They carried her story. They spoke for her. And through their work, the truth, as much as the evidence allowed, finally came forward. In the end, The prosecutor said it best the day Brianna was sentenced.
What's important is that justice has been done for Taylor Rose.
Those 5 words are the closest thing to closure anyone will ever have. Taylor's life was short. Her disappearance was hidden. Her death was senseless. But the truth did come out. Her mother was held accountable. And the child who vanished in silence will never be forgotten. This is the story of Taylor Rose, a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices depend on everyone else to speak for them.